Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on turning your challenges into opportunities. This webinar is brought to you by Teach a Man to Fish. We are an educational charity based in the United Kingdom whose mission is to empower young people with the skills that they need to succeed in school, work, and life. Now, a little bit about me. Some of you will know me already if you've come to previous webinars this year. My name is India. I'm based in the United Kingdom. I'm part of the Teach a Man to Fish team, and I've been working on our wonderful educational program, the School Enterprise Challenge, for the last 6 years. The School Enterprise Challenge gives young people the chance to become entrepreneurs whilst they're still at school. So participants in the program get to plan, set up, and then actually launch and run a real student-led business. So in the process, they learn about business, of course, but they also develop a really wide range of key life skills, such as problem solving, communication, leadership, and teamwork. We also have here today my colleague, Paula. She will be supporting me by answering your questions in the chat and helping out with the activities later on in the breakout rooms. Now, we really want to make the most of our time together today and for you to get as much out of today's session as you can. Your participation in the group activities will make all the difference, so we really encourage you to get actively involved. Before we start with that, though, I'd just like to share some quick ground rules for today's webinar. So you'll notice that you're all on mute at the moment, and that's because there's quite a lot of us, so we can't all be speaking at the same time, but don't worry, there will be plenty of opportunities to interact later on. But until I invite you to speak, it would be great if you could make sure your microphone is muted, just so that there's no background noise. At regular points in the webinar, I will be asking you questions, which you can answer via the chat box. And I'll also invite some of you to turn on your microphone and camera and share live with the group. Now, it would be great if you could introduce yourself if you haven't already in the chat box. It would be great to know who we've got here today. So please do say hello in the chat. Tell us your name and what country you're joining from, if you haven't already done so. So let's take a look then at what we will be covering today. The duration of this webinar will be up to 1.5 hours. And in today's webinar, we will not be giving you the answers to your problems or telling you exactly how to do things. Instead, our aim is to support you to learn how to see problems from a different perspective, to come up with your own solutions, and to plan the best way forward. Now, remember, everything that we share today is designed so that you as teachers can experience the tools and the activities for yourselves before you bring them to your lessons and replicate them with your learners. So today, you will be learning by doing through 3 different problem-solving tools, and they are called Flip It, 15% Solutions, and a SWOT analysis. At the end of today's webinar, I will share with you, as always, a link to a survey. And when you complete the survey, you will be able to download your certificate of attendance. And I'll also be sharing these presentation slides with you by email after today's session. So there's no need to write down everything that you see on screen. But you may want to have a pen and a piece of paper handy for some of the activities later on. Okay, so throughout today's session, we will be using the School Enterprise Challenge as an example of a project through which your students can develop their problem-solving skills. So I'd like to begin by finding out, have you ever taken part in the School Enterprise Challenge before? My colleague Paula is going to launch a poll so that you can vote via the poll on screen. Have you ever taken part in the School Enterprise Challenge before?
And there we are, India. So far, quarter of our attendees voted. 30% of yes say yes. 72% goes with a no. We still have a few more seconds for everyone to vote. Have you taken part in the School Enterprise Challenge before? And if not, you are here in the right time, at the right place at the right time, right? Okay, amazing. I'm going to end the poll then. Almost all of you voted. Let's share the results. So 30% say yes, while 70% say no. So tell us more about it, India.
Thank you, Paula. So lots of new faces today. So for those of you that don't know, the School Enterprise Challenge is a free, award-winning educational program which was created and is run by us here at Teach a Man to Fish. So for the last 10 years, we have been supporting participants, which are young students and teachers like yourselves from all over the world, to plan, set up, and run their very own real school businesses. And our educational materials support you the whole way, from coming up with an exciting business idea to actually developing it into a business plan before going on to launch your school business, selling real products or services to real customers and earning real money. Now, why is the School Enterprise Challenge such a great platform for developing problem-solving skills in particular? Well, there's a few reasons, and those of you that have taken part before will be familiar with this. So first of all, it's because it is a student-led program. So if it's done really well at your school, it will be the students who lead the whole process. It's the students who come up with the idea for the business that they would like to implement, who go through the activities to write their business plan. It's the students who organize sales events and lead team meetings. Of course, you as teachers also have an important role to play in facilitating the process, but really it's the students who will take the lead, make the decisions, and be the driving force behind the business. Secondly, through the program, students will be faced with real life challenges. So setting up a business, as I'm sure you'll know, is hard work, and a school business is really no different. So along the way, students face all sorts of challenges, like how to raise the startup capital, how to organize themselves into different departments and plan their time and the activities which are needed to keep the business running, or working out what price to sell their product or service for, which will appeal to their customers, but also cover their costs. These are all real challenges which students taking part in the School Enterprise Challenge will face, and which your students need to come together to figure out how to overcome. And what's great about the fact that students are exposed to all of these real life challenges is that this experience is relevant to their life after school. So, as I said earlier, through taking part in the program, students not only build up their knowledge of how to plan and run a business, but they also develop all these wonderful, important key life skills like communication, teamwork, problem solving, leadership, which will set them up for success after school. So as I've explained, the School Enterprise Challenge is undoubtedly full of challenges, and students will come up against obstacles as they plan and implement their school business. And of course, just like in real life, it's impossible to predict and to prepare for every single problem that your students might face when they're planning and running a school business. What's more important is that your students are equipped with the right mindset, the right skills, and problem-solving techniques to overcome whatever comes their way. Now, we believe that there are two important steps to solving any problem. First of all, making sure that you understand the problem properly. And secondly, generating and implementing solutions. So let me break that down. The first step to solving a problem well is to make sure that you understand exactly what the problem is and what's causing it. So what that means is embracing the problem. Don't shy away from it. Believe in your ability to find a way to overcome it. Then analyze the root cause. Break down the problem and ask yourself what's causing it. As you might know from your experience in real life, it can be quite tempting to jump ahead and try to jump ahead to solutions without fully understanding exactly what the problem is. But if you do that, you might jump ahead to the wrong solution. So taking the time to really understand the problem before you start thinking about solutions can save you lots of time and effort later on. And thirdly, sometimes you just need to take on a new perspective. So when dealing with problems, you need to have a positive mindset and this belief that every problem that you encounter, it's an opportunity to refocus, to stop what's not working, to try new things, to learn and to grow. And then once you've got a clear understanding of what you're dealing with, what the problem is, then you're ready to move on to finding solutions. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. In fact, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different problem-solving tools and techniques out there to suit all different types of situations and different types of problems. But generally, they follow a pretty similar pattern. It tends to start with, first of all, exploring different possible solutions. So looking at the problem from different angles and thinking creatively about a variety of different approaches you could take, different ways you could solve it. Then comes evaluating the different options to decide on which one you want to implement. And finally, actually taking action. It's no good just thinking about how you might solve the problem, but you need to actually take action and have a go. So trying out your best solution and then monitoring your progress to see if it's bringing you the results that you expected or you want, or maybe if you need to go back to the drawing board and try something else. So broadly, those are the steps to breaking down a problem and coming up with solutions. As I said, though, there are hundreds of different approaches and techniques that you can try to guide you through this process. And today I will be introducing you to just a few of them. So the first one that I'm going to introduce you to is a problem-solving technique which you can use with your students to help them with the first part of the problem solving. That is understanding the problem and changing their perspective. So we will be doing this activity in breakout rooms. So let me just begin by explaining how breakout rooms work in case you aren't familiar. So you will be assigned to a breakout room automatically, and at the end of the activity, you will be moved back to the main room. In the breakout room, please remember to click these buttons so that you can unmute your microphone, and you're also welcome to turn on your video if you like. As I said earlier, you will only get out of this webinar what you put in. So I really, really encourage you to get actively involved in the activity. If you need assistance while you're in the breakout room, you can click on this button to ask for help and then invite host. But please only do that if you really need our assistance, because we wouldn't like to interrupt your discussions. But that said, if you're in a very, very quiet group and for some reason the other participants aren't involved with the activity, and if you'd like to be moved to a different group that's more active, you can use that button to let us know so we can move you around. Okay, so now that you know how the breakout rooms will work, let me explain the instructions for this activity. So the activity is called Flip It. And it's a really simple one, which you can use with your students to help them get unstuck and move towards their goal. Often, a change in a problem or situation simply comes from a change in our perspective. So the goal of this activity is to lead you towards that change in perspective. You can use this activity to help you change your perspective about any type of problem. But for the purpose of practicing the activity together in small groups today, I'm going to give you an example of a problem to work through together. And it's a real one, which I know lots of you are indeed facing. So the problem that I would like you to focus on for the activity is this. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted our usual way of doing things. So imagine that as a result of COVID-19, the school business which your students were running previously is no longer viable. And now you can't see how to continue taking part in the School Enterprise Challenge. So in your groups, you will have 7 minutes to discuss and write down your fears and concerns about this problem. And don't worry, you're not going to wallow in your fears for too long, but to start off with, you do need to spend some time exploring your fears and gathering information. I'd really like everyone to contribute, please, to this activity. And remember, it's important to be honest and open, because this activity will give you the opportunity to reframe your fears. But first of all, you need to be honest about what your fears and concerns are. Now, at this stage, the activity is not about coming up with solutions. It's just about writing down your fears and concerns in relation to the problem that due to COVID, your school business is no longer viable. It can't continue and you don't know what to do next. So while I set up the breakout rooms, please give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go, if you understand the instructions, what you'll be doing. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat now so that we can answer them before we move you into breakout rooms. I can see a few thumbs up. That's a good start. Okay, so you're going to be in rooms of 6 to 7 people. As I say, you'll have 7 minutes for this activity just to write down your fears and concerns in relation to this problem. Make sure that you nominate someone to be a note taker, because when I bring you back to the main room, I will ask you to share what you've discussed. Okay, I'm going to open the rooms now, so I will see you all back in 7 minutes. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think we've got everyone back in the main room now. How was that? Hopefully in your rooms, you had a chance to come up with a few fears and concerns around this problem that the pandemic means that your school business, your previous school business, is no longer viable. So I brought you back to the main room so that I can explain the next step in this activity. So for this next part, we are going to give you 9 minutes, again, in the same groups. And what I would like you to do is to look through all of the fears and concerns that you came up with and try to flip the perspective by reframing them in terms of hope. So, for example, one of your fears might have been, I fear that it won't be safe to travel to the market and sell our products anymore. So you could flip that into a statement of hope, which would be, I hope that we can find another place or a different way to safely sell our products. So it says on screen you've got 7 minutes, but I think we'll do it for 9 minutes to give you enough time to try to flip as many of your fears as possible into statements of hope. Please give me another thumbs up if you're ready to go, or let me know if you have any questions. And after you've done this second part of the activity, then I'll give you the opportunity to share your reflections on the activity. Looks like we've got a few thumbs up and no questions, so I will open the breakout rooms again in just a moment. You've got 9 minutes to look through all of the fears and concerns that you came up with and see how many of them you can flip into a statement of hope. Remember to write down what you come up with, because I'll be inviting you to share it when I bring you back to the main room. Okay, so let's go, and I'll see you all back here in 9 minutes. Okay, welcome back to the main room, everybody. I think we have everyone here now. I'm really interested to know, how did you find that activity? How was the experience of, first of all, exploring your fears and concerns about this problem, and then trying to flip your fears and concerns into hopes? How did it make you feel? Was it easy? Was it difficult? If anybody would like to share live your experience, please feel free to put up your hand, and then I can unmute you so you can share with the group how you found it. If anyone would like to share live, please feel free to put your hand up. If not, you're also welcome to share your reflections in the chat by typing in the chat.
Yeah,
Zina.
I'm ready for, yeah.
Hi, Naresh, please go ahead.
Okay. Basically, I'm just discussing, I will throw a light that whatever basically you have mentioned, that's absolutely right, that the flip the step, whatever you told in the first one session, that's absolutely right. But I think that we should have to focus on the cognitive learning instead of the root learning among the students. And most of the time we just provide them the content, but we don't tell them how to read that one, how to basically understand the concept. In the first one session you told that what are the problems and how could we solve that one. First one, we should have to find out the problems, and happily we should have to accept. That is great one thing that you told at that time. I appreciate that. And we should have to just tell the students about, don't basically fear to ask anything. Just they should have the basically free atmosphere we should have to provide to the students. So whatever they have in a mind, they could ask anything, and at the end we should have to provide them the answers for that one. We should not go away from and just lag behind that one key. Okay, if they have asked, there is no need to basically ask these type of the questions. We should have to give them a space. We should have to give them a time for asking as well as solving the problems at that time too. I think so, as per my view.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Naresh, for sharing your thoughts. I completely agree. It's about providing the right environment in which students can be comfortable dealing with these problems, asking questions, as you say, and building their confidence. Would anybody else like to share? I think we have time to hear from one more person. Would anybody else like to share your takeaways from this Flip It activity? I can see someone's got their thumbs up, but I can't see who it is. Zina.
Hi, thanks, India. I'm just speaking on behalf of my group and just making an observation that I think might add some value here. I think it's so interesting that we all suffer a little bit from COVID pandemic victimhood, and it's very easy to be negative about, oh, this is not going to work, or this can't happen, or we have to be distant, or people don't have money, etc., etc. All of these things are actually true, but what was really interesting about this exercise was the instruction was to be positive, and the instruction was to reframe this in an optimistic, positive way. And it's interesting because I think collectively, if everybody is being positive, the ideas do flow. So while you struggle with language a little bit to kind of change something very negative to something positive, it's the collective feedback that everybody brings that can actually change it. So I just thought I'd bring that point across to everybody. Thanks.
Yeah, that's a great observation. Thank you so much, Zeenat. It can feel a bit of a strange way to go about problem solving, to start by focusing on your fears, but like over time, as you start to get into it, as you say, the momentum builds and it starts to flip your perspective. So brilliant. Okay, so I'm now going to explain a bit more about how you can replicate this activity with your students, depending on if you're teaching in person or online. So when you do this activity with your students, if you are teaching in person, I recommend that you put 3 pieces of flip chart paper on the wall and label them hopes, fears, and pull. And if you're doing this activity online, you can do the same thing on an online whiteboard like Jamboard or Miro or whatever digital collaboration tool you're using for online teaching. So then you will get your students to spend a few minutes listing their fears and concerns about whatever problem it is that you're trying to tackle by writing them down on sticky notes and then sticking them on the fear piece of paper. Then it's good to spend some time discussing the fears with your students. You can ask for volunteers to elaborate on what they have written down. Then after your students have listed their fears, you will invite them to flip their perspective, as we did together, by writing down their hopes in response to the fears and sticking them on the piece of paper labeled hope. And then the final step, which we haven't done together today, but which I recommend you do when you replicate this with your students, is to get students to take a vote on the hopes which they think they can take practical action on. So you can get students to vote with stickers or by drawing on the sticky notes. Then count up the hopes and move the hopes which have the most votes to the 3rd piece of paper or the 3rd slide, which is labeled pull. And that's because these are the things which together can pull you one step closer to achieving your hope or your goal. And then finally, I recommend that you ask your students to brainstorm out loud any actions that they could take, which they could take to take them, one step closer to achieving these hopes, to making it a reality. So get your students to write down the actions and discuss them together to see how they can make this hopeful situation, the optimistic one, a reality. And there you have it. As you can see, it's quite a simple activity, but it's a great one for helping students to break down a bigger problem into smaller chunks, their fears, to see how negative things can be turned into a positive with this change in perspective, and to come up with a plan of action for moving closer towards their goal. I'll just have a quick look at the chat to see what you've been sharing. We're about to move on now to introduce you to a different problem-solving tool. So if you have any final questions or reflections that you would like to share about this one, please do share them now in the chat. Some nice comments from people saying that it's helped, this activity, Flip It, has helped you to look at things positively. Brilliant. Okay, so it looks like there's no questions on this one, so we shall move on because we've got quite a lot of exciting things to get through today. So we're now going to move on to exploring a different problem-solving tool. And I'm wondering, have you heard the famous saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step? I'm sure that you probably have, and this quote summarizes the power of this problem-solving technique, which is called 15% solutions. So you might be wondering, what exactly is a 15% solution? Well, it is any first step or solution which you can do without approval from anyone else or without any resources. It's something which you can do now, which is entirely within your control and your reach. Or to put it another way, it's something that you could do right now if you wanted to. And the idea behind this is that small changes can spark big changes when you add them up. So I don't know about you, but I find it can be quite easy to get lost in these really ambitious, over-the-top ideas, or maybe sometimes you have a good idea, but then you get stuck in your head thinking about all the reasons why it can't be done, why it's not possible. And in either of those cases, you can make your life easier by just starting small. So 15% solutions is great because it can help your students to discover their power as individuals, but also collectively. It can help them to move past a blockage, move beyond a place of negativity and powerlessness into positive action. And it can help to close that gap between knowing what you should do, the ideal solution, and actually doing things to move towards it. So you can use this technique to help a group of students come up with actionable solutions to a problem that they're facing as a group, or also to any personal challenges. So I'll explain now how you can do it. The first step is to introduce the activity or the tool in a similar way to how I just did, explaining how small changes put together can lead to big changes. Then get your students to individually list their personal 15% solutions to whatever problem or challenge you're tackling. So you can ask them, what is your 15%? Where do you have freedom to act? What can you do personally to make a difference to this problem without permission from anyone else or any resources? What could you do now? Then, working in small groups, you can invite your students to share their personal 15% solutions with one another for around 3 minutes per person. And the purpose here is just for students to start by sharing their ideas of what action they could take to contribute towards solving this problem. We don't want the other students to judge or comment on or respond to the 15% solutions initially. And then after the students have shared their 15% solutions in their small groups, then the students can spend some time refining each one. So the purpose here is for the students to talk about the ideas that they've come up with and try to refine them to make them as doable as possible. That might mean making them smaller, revising down their ambitions perhaps if they've come up with quite big ideas initially. And the benefit of doing this in small groups is that together, the group can explore how they can support one another to achieve each person's 15% solution. So now that you know what 15% solutions is all about, I wanted to share some tips on how you can make the most of this problem-solving tool. So as I said before, this one can be used for personal problems, for individual challenges, as well as for problems affecting a group, like your school business team. But it really does work particularly effectively as a problem-solving technique for a problem affecting a group, because it helps groups of individuals to work together to identify how they can make a personal contribution to a common shared problem or challenge that the group is facing. My next tip is that it's a good idea to make the solutions transparent by getting students to write them down, maybe placing them somewhere visible like a classroom notice board, because by making this public commitment, the students are more likely to carry out their promises and their personal solutions. Next, I would say, remember that 15% solutions is not about coming up with the biggest, most brilliant, creative, intelligent solutions. Sometimes it's all about just finding that first step that feels safe, that feels doable and achievable. So this is a really good way for students to build their confidence and the momentum to start chipping away, especially at a bigger problem, and to start taking small steps to solve it. My final tip is to consider not doing this just as a one-off activity, but actually integrating it in your routine. So you could ask students for their 15% solutions at the end of class or at the end of your business team meetings. And these small steps are often overlooked because they're not the big bang solutions. But as I said at the beginning, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So they should not be overlooked. So I'd love to know now, what do you think of this problem-solving technique? Have you heard of it before? Would you consider trying it out with your students? Please do share your thoughts in the chat box. Let me know what you think of this one. How do you see 15% solutions working with your students? It's quiet in the chat. Maybe you're all busy reflecting. I'll leave you to have a think about that in your own time. And if you have any questions about it or you want to share your comments later on, please do. Pierre has commented, though, that it's a good way to get students to participate. Exactly, to involve everyone, because then the onus is not just on one or two students to come up with solutions, but to involve everyone in the team or in your class to think about how they can make a personal contribution to addressing the problem and starting small with something that feels achievable. Zena added as well, it's a great technique which allows students to own the solution. Absolutely, the ideas are coming from them. Brilliant. Okay, so so far in today's webinar, I have introduced you to two problem-solving techniques, Flip It and 15% solutions, which could be applied to all sorts of different problems and situations. So now we are going to zoom in on school businesses and look at another problem-solving tool, which is a really important part of the business planning process. It's called a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Analyzing these four things will complement everything which your students have learned so far in the School Enterprise Challenge around how to meet the needs of their customers and beat their competitors. So a SWOT analysis will help your students to build on what they do well, to address what they're lacking, to minimize risks, and to take the greatest possible advantage of chances for success. And it's quite easy to carry out. So as the acronym suggests, all your students need to do is to think about what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, considering all of the information that they've gathered through their market research and competitor analysis, and then to consider how they could overcome their weaknesses and threats. So one key thing to note is the difference between these four elements. So strengths and weaknesses are internal to your business and in the present, whereas opportunities and threats are external factors which might occur in the future. Please pay close attention to that point because in a moment we're going to play a game where I will give you some examples and you will tell me whether you think it is a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat. So in this game, we're going to practice completing a simple SWOT analysis together for a chicken rearing business. And what we're going to do is I am going to give you an example, a statement, and I'm going to ask you to vote via the poll on screen if you think the statement is a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat. So my lovely colleague Paula is going to help me out with the poll.
Let's go. Thank you, India. So the first one, let me launch it first. I was jumping to the poll without reading it. So now it's up there for everyone to read it. The number one statement is, or statement number one, sorry. We are very good at speaking in public and selling to people. What do you think that is? A strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat? You can all vote for one of the options, one of the four options. What do you think that is? We are very good at speaking in public and selling to people. So far, 100% said strength, but only half of you voted. So I'm going to allow a few more seconds to see if we get more votes in. Oh, opportunity now is showing up. 5% of you now say it's an opportunity. Ooh, or a weakness. Which one is it? Strength, Olga says in the chat box. Okay, let's end the poll and see. So 86% of you voted for this being a strength. Which one is the correct one, India?
Great, well done. We're off to a strong start. So we are very good at speaking in public and selling to people. It's a strength because they are skills that your team members have. Let's take a look at the second one.
Awesome. Let's go for the second one. We launch it and it says, the chickens might get sick. That might happen. What is that? Strength, weakness, opportunity, or a threat? And it's already, the poll is already on. Ooh, it goes head to head, weakness, threat. It's 50-50, 47-53. Oh my gosh, this is a difficult one. So let's allow a few more seconds. Mondi adds in the chat is a threat. Let's see, so far it's head to head. So one more second and we end the poll. And let me share these results then. So 48% of you think that this is a weakness, whereas 52% goes with a threat. So he's a winner in India.
Thanks, Paula. Okay, so we're all in agreement that it's a bad thing, but the answer is it's a threat because it hasn't happened yet, but there's a risk that your chickens might get sick, and it would be like a negative external factor. They're affected by some disease, something that's external to your business, and it's a risk in the future. So that one is a threat.
Great. Thank you. So let's go with number 3, right? So we launch it now. Number 3 is we do not know how to help the chickens if they get sick. we do not know how to help the chickens if they get sick. What is our strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat? I can see most of you voting for weakness. Now opportunity and threat is also coming up as an option. So let's see, only half of you voted so far. So remember, you can choose one of the 4 options or on your screen, sorry. Which one do you think it is if we do not know how to help the chickens if they get sick? Okay, let's go with what we have so far and share the results. So 85% of you think that's a weakness. What do you think, India?
Yeah, well done. I agree. This one is a weakness because you lack these knowledge and skills within your team. So it's the opposite to the first one, which were skills that you do have.
Amazing. So let's go with number 4, and we launch that statement. And it says, we have a school shed. Sorry, I'll go again. We have a school shed. We house the chickens for free in. What is that? You have a resource available. Is that a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat? I can see opportunity started like the first one you all chose, but strength is also coming up now, 81 to 19. Only half of you voted so far, so let's allow a few more seconds. And it looks like opportunity is the winner. So let me share the results. 79% of you thought that this is an opportunity. Is that correct?
It's all down to the wording, isn't it? It's tricky. I consider this one to be a strength because it's a resource which you have available. The implication is you're already making use of it. So I would consider that to be a strength.
Okay. Great. So let's go with the next one. And it says, our school is close to the town, so we could sell our chickens at the market. So this is about your location being close to town, so you can actually sell your chickens over there. What is that? Strength, weakness, opportunity, or threat? And I can see opportunity coming up as the winner so far, 76%, 22% think it's a strength. And the majority of you already voted. So let's see and share the results. So 81% of you think this is an opportunity. Is that correct?
Yeah, I agree. It's an opportunity because it's something that you could take advantage of in the future. But the implication is that you've got this, you're in a great location, but maybe you're not yet selling your chickens there. So it's an opportunity.
Thank you, India. I think you're giving cues already with the could and might, or right? Like the wording is key here. Okay, let's go with the last one then. And we launch it and it says, our competitors can do deliveries because they have a car. Is that a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, or a threat? Our competitors can do deliveries because they have a car. What is that? What do you think that is? Strength, 9% of you, or 8% is going with strength, 15% with weakness, and so far the majority of you think that's a threat. So let's allow a few more seconds before ending this last poll. Ooh, I think all the 4 options are getting a vote right now. So let's close it and see, share the results. So 64% of you think that's a threat. So which one is the correct answer?
Yeah, well done. We definitely saved a harder one until last. But that's a threat because it implies that you don't have a business, you don't have a car. So your team can't do deliveries, but your competitors can. So your customers might choose to buy from your competitors instead of from you. Great. So that's all of the ones for this little game. Thank you, Paola, for your help. And I hope that you all enjoyed having a play of that game. I think it's a nice way to introduce your students to the differences between these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But more importantly than that, hopefully it's also got you thinking about the kinds of things that you should be considering in your SWOT analysis. So the knowledge and skills that your team members have, your location, your physical and natural resources that you have available at school to your business team to take advantage of, what your customers think of you, what your competitors are doing, what your customers think of what your competitors are doing, and of course, the threats. The disease that we used as an example is just one, but it could also be a freak weather event, government restrictions, anything like that, things that are external to your business. So lots of different important things to take into consideration when you do your SWOT analysis. So now I thought we could take a look at how you can guide your students to complete a SWOT analysis for their own business. And instead of just having a class discussion and just asking students what ideas that they can think of, a good way to carry this out is a bit differently, is through something called a gallery walk, because it's a good way to get all of your students involved. So a gallery walk is where your students walk around the classroom and have a class discussion with their pens. So this is not group work, but this is an individual activity where the talking is done with your pen. So I recommend that you start by explaining what a SWOT analysis is and why it's so important. And remember to mention the difference that strengths and weaknesses are internal and in the present, whereas opportunities and threats are external and in the future. And please do encourage your students to be completely honest about what they think the weaknesses and threats affecting their business are, because the first step to overcoming your shortcomings is to recognize them. So then, to carry out this activity as a gallery walk, I recommend that you stick a big piece of paper on the 4 walls of the classroom. So one for strengths, one for weaknesses, one for opportunities, and one for threats. If you can't stick them on the wall, you can put them on 4 different tables in different corners of the room. Or if you're teaching online, again, this activity works really nicely if you're teaching online using an online whiteboard like Miro or Google Slides, for example. So then at the top of each paper or digital slide, you can write these questions to help prompt your students' thinking. So on the strengths piece of paper, you can write down, what advantages do you have? What does your team do best? What resources have you already got? What is your unique selling point or USP? In other words, what do you have that your competitors don't have? Then on the weaknesses piece of paper, you can write, what could your team improve on? What would others see as your weakness? Why might people not buy your product or service? Then under opportunities, the questions are, what opportunities does your location provide? Are there any local events? Are there any changes happening in your area in terms of people, lifestyles, trends, buying habits? And could you take advantage of any technology to help your business? And then finally, on the threats piece of paper, you can write down, what problems might you face in the future? What are your competitors doing at the moment? And what are they doing to develop or expand their own businesses? Do you have all the money that you need? Could any of your weaknesses threaten your business in the future? So those are just some questions to get your students started thinking about their SWOT analysis. So I then recommend that you give your students around 10 minutes or longer to walk around the classroom and note down their answers on the paper. So at each piece of paper, they should write down their answers to at least 2 of the questions. And in addition to writing, they should be reading the answers and ideas that other students before them have come up with, seeing how they can build on those points and what ideas that sparks. And then once the time is up and every student has rotated around the 4 pieces of paper to contribute their answers to all of these questions, then you can come together as a class, review what you've come up with and discuss it together. You can actually take this a step further by then analyzing your SWOT analysis and thinking, how could you use your strengths to take advantage of the opportunities that you've identified? And how could you use your strengths to avoid the threats that you've identified? Similarly, how could you minimize your weaknesses using the opportunities that you identified? And how could you minimize your weaknesses to avoid the threats you identified? So to give you an example, in the chicken rearing example, which we went through together when we were playing that game, one of the threats was that the chickens might get sick. And one of the weaknesses was that the students don't know how to care for the chickens if they fall ill. So obviously there's a link there. If the students can learn how to take care of the chickens properly, like for example, by consulting a vet and following their advice on what precautions to take, then that will minimize the threat or the risk that the chickens get very, very sick and worst case scenario die because the students don't know how to care for them properly. So with that being said, I wanted to show you now a real example of a SWOT analysis, which was completed by the students at St. Mark's Senior Secondary Public School in India. So originally, their school business was making and selling cloth bags out of scrap cloth. And then later on, they diversified into other products. So they started making and selling cushion covers and table covers and napkins. And you can see an extract of their SWOT analysis on screen. So when they analyzed the strengths and the weaknesses and opportunities and threats affecting their business, they noticed one of their weaknesses is that they had a limited number of products. So as I say, at the beginning, they were just selling cloth bags made out of scrap cloth. So they faced this threat that customers might buy from them once and then not come back and be repeat customers because the student business team didn't have anything new or innovative to offer their customers. They then realized that they could overcome this weakness by diversifying to a wider range of products. And figuring this out at the business plan stage helped them to avoid that risk of customers not coming back and buying from them again before it became a real problem. Now, they also identified that they had quite a limited customer base because they were mainly promoting to the parents of their school community. And at the same time, they had noted that the government in Delhi had introduced a ban on the use of plastic bags. So the students put 2 and 2 together and they realized that there were opportunities to expand their customer base by capitalizing on this change in the law around the use of plastic bags and focusing their promotions and their product line towards all these new potential customers that were switching from plastic to cloth bags for their shopping and looking for new eco alternatives. So there you have it. It's just an extract, one short example, but hopefully that helps to paint a picture of how you can analyze the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and threats affecting your own business to understand how you can start to overcome any challenges that you're facing and to anticipate them, to avoid these threats before they become a real problem. So I'm afraid that that brings us towards the end of today's session. So I would like to pause for a moment and ask you to reflect on this question. What is one thing that you will do with what you learned today? What is one thing that you will do with what you learned today? So casting your minds back to the beginning, first of all, we looked at the key steps involved in understanding a problem and coming up with solutions. Then we went through the flip it activity. Then we looked at the 15% solutions activity. And finally, just now, we've been looking at the SWOT analysis. So out of all of that we've shared today, everything you've experienced, what is one thing that you will do with what you learned today? I'll just give you a moment to have a think about that. If you would like to, feel free to share your answer in the chat. Vinika says that she'll be trying out the flip it activity. Shalu says she'll be trying out the 15% solution activity. And Zina has commented, a lot of what we did today rests on positivity. This is integral to all of the tools that we learned. Absolutely, that's a very important reflection. Thank you, Zina. Someone says, all of the activities are too good. Great, yeah, hopefully you'll have a chance to try them all. So, as always, I wanted to end the session by sharing some useful resources which you can have a look at to explore this topic further in your own time. So, first of all, for those of you that, the 70% of you that said at the beginning that you've not taken part in the School Enterprise Challenge before, I encourage you to register. Go to our website, www.schoolenterprisechallenge.org, have a look at the program and sign up your school, because the most useful resource that I can recommend are our own educational materials. So business guide number 5 and a video, which I have linked on screen, will take you through in more detail how to carry out some of these activities, particularly the SWOT analysis activity with your learners. And the video features a school in Uganda, I think, doing it for themselves, their student business team. So I really recommend that you sign up for the School Enterprise Challenge if you haven't already, so that you can get access to all of our educational materials and support. And then as well, I've linked on screen some other problem-solving activities and tools that you might not have heard of and that you might want to take a look at. So there's one called Squid, which will help your students to map out the questions that they might have about a problem and to start to map out the possible answers. Then there's one called the Speedboat activity, which is a good one to help students to work out what's standing in their way of achieving a goal. And then finally, the last two, the How, Now, Wow matrix and the Impact Effort matrix, can help with selecting which ideas to take forward. When you're tackling a problem, you've got lots of potential solutions or ideas, but you're not sure how to decide on which one to take forward. Those are both two good tools to help you and your students to decide. There on screen, you can see our social media, website, email address, so that you can stay in touch with us, stay connected. We always share news about exciting opportunities that we've got on offer, and of course, the upcoming webinars on our social media channels. So please do make sure that you're following us if you're not already. And finally, as promised, you can fill in this short survey to get access to your certificate of attendance. You won't be able to click on screen, but please follow the link in the chat, which Paula has just kindly shared. Your feedback is really important to us. We read every single thing that you share with us through the survey. So please make sure to click on the link in the chat, access the survey. It only takes less than 5 minutes, and then you will be able to receive your certificate of attendance by email. Please make sure to type your name and your email address correctly when you fill in the survey, because your certificate will be emailed to you automatically and personalized with your name. And while you're doing that, let me tell you about the next webinar that we've got coming up. It is webinar number 8 in the series, and it is on the topic of making money, how to make financial planning fun and easy for your students. I know that's a popular one, it's often requested, so don't miss it. Make sure to join us for webinar number 8, which is taking place in 2 weeks' time, on Tuesday, the 24th of August at 2 p.m. British Summer Time. That is the time in the United Kingdom. And again on Thursday, the 26th of August at 4 p.m. British Summer Time. So you can find the links to register to those 2 webinars on our social media channels. And I will also share the links with you when I share the link to the survey and the presentation slides from today's session later on tomorrow. So that is all from myself and Paola for today. I just want to say a huge thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you here today, and I've really enjoyed how actively you've got involved in all of the activities and sharing your reflections in the chat. So thank you very much, and we hope to see you in webinar number 8 in 2 weeks' time.